Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My background is in accounting. The last 31 years I've been operating a manufacturing business, so that background just naturally makes me search for root causes. You got a problem. So to me, the root cause really of what ails us is the size, the scope, all the regulations, all the intrusion of government into our lives, and the cost of government. I guess I want to first start out by just asking, right now, our federal government's almost 25% of our GDP. You add on state and local governments onto that, and we're about 41%. European-style socialist countries, Norway's 40%, Greece is 47%, France is 53%. European countries are kind of stuck with about 10% structural unemployment, much lower growth rates than we experience. I just kind of want everybody to comment on that basic premise. Dr. Zandi.
Yeah, I think the size of government is inordinately high at this point. In part, it's because of the very severe recession that we've gone through and the weak recovery. But I think if you look at federal government expenditures as a share of GDP, it's 25.5%. The long-run average, meaning back to just after World War II, is 19.5%. You should be up or down relative to that, given your demographic structure and lots of other factors. But that kind of gives you a sense of the magnitude of the problem. Yeah, I would concur.
One reason the spending to GDP is high is because GDP is low, but nevertheless, spending is high. But it's high historically. But I would urge members to look at the testimony of CBO Director Elmendorf this week before the special committee about the fact that the choices that you will face of dealing with the deficits down the road are much more complicated now because of changes in the economy and changes in the demographics. That looking at historical spending ratios is not something that we can easily go back to without really cutting to the bone of programs that enjoy a lot of support and do a lot of good.
There's a big literature on long-term growth, the determinants of it, that Robert Barrow at Harvard is one of the leaders of. And one of the more reliable results in that literature is that if your government to GDP is high, then you don't grow very much. And we understand the channels through which that effect occurs. One is that a lot of growth often comes from innovation and inventing cool things, and government doesn't do that, right? And the second thing is that when you have a big government sector, then they bid up the wages for everybody else and make businesses not competitive. Those are the channels.
Yeah, I was interested in your analysis of the three stages of Keynesian stimulus. And from my standpoint, aren't we just stuck in stage one? When you take a look at the 10-year projections, we never balance the budget. All we're really talking about is the size of the stimulus on a year-by-year basis. How do we ever get out of this? And we certainly don't get out of it by increasing that stimulus this year by $450 billion. Isn't that true?
That's right. We're kind of stuck in a dependency cycle that after I wrote about this in the Wall Street Journal a couple of months ago, someone sent me an email and they mentioned that Keynes himself even wrote about this, that you have to avoid being in a period where you just keep doing a stimulus every year. And we are stuck in that, and we need to get out with a big permanent fix.
Dr. Zandi, you talked about long-term, we're about 20% size of government relationship to GDP, but also long-term, regardless of the top marginal tax rate, our revenue generation is about 18%. How do we ever address that structural deficit without recognizing the fact that, by and large, all we're going to be able to extract out of our economy in terms of federal taxation is about 18%?
I agree with your view. I think that we need to close that structural deficit. This is what I worry about. I think the economy is very close to going into recession. If we go into recession, our fiscal problems are going to get magnified many times over. And these numbers you're talking about are going to get a lot worse very fast. So we need to be, and you may not believe me, you may not buy into my view, but I think we should work really hard at avoiding it. So the debate, and I don't disagree with you, I think the discussion is what are we going to do to make sure we don't go into recession now? Because if we do, we've got a boatload of problems.
Here's my problem with your prescription. It's based on timing. And let's face it, throughout economic history, I don't believe government has proven to be particularly effective at managing economies or being able to precisely time. I realize you're economists. I'm not. I'm an accountant. mean, I take a look at the.
That's pretty close.
You know,
Yeah.
I take a look at government estimates. For example, in the fiscal year 2009 budget, we estimated revenue for 2010, 11, and 12 at 9.3 trillion. Right now, we're looking at it being about 7 trillion. We are off by more than 30%. So I just don't see how we can fine-tune time, you know, about a $450 billion deficit or stimulus. I think what we need to do is go back to the root cause and start realizing that regulations are a huge problem. The size of government is simply too big, and we need to start dialing that back. I mean, doesn't that make sense as opposed to trying to think that we're so smart that we can fine-tune these fiscal prescriptions?
I have more, I would like to respond. Chad, sorry.
No, that's fine.
I have more faith in you. I think we need for you to do this. You have to get the timing right. And I don't agree that everything that policymakers have done has been a mistake. Yeah, there's a lot of things that have been done. Some of the things I wouldn't have done if I were king for the day. But you take the totality of what the Bush administration did, the Obama administration has done, what the Federal Reserve has done, it's really quite impressive. We
You know, all the government
can't give up.
all the government actions that caused the housing bubble. I mean, all we're doing is we're reacting to the harm government caused. So that'd be my point. Let's take a look at government and first require of government, do no harm. So you take a look at things that currently the government is harming our economy, regulations, taxes. I mean, does anybody really dispute that taxing the economy doesn't do harm? Now, I realize we do have to have a certain level of taxation, but it creates harm. Why would we want to increase taxes, particularly in a time of economic weakness? I just don't get that at all.
I don't either, and I'm not. No one's advocating that. I'm saying cut taxes.
We're asking for a balanced approach in terms of a long-term credible spending restraint plan. And what I'm saying is, how about have our policy prescriptions centered around economic growth so that we can get the size of government down to 18% by growing our economy? Let's work on the denominator and the numerator.
First, I was going to say something similar to what Dr. Zandi said about the fact that we're not talking about fine-tuning the economy right now. We're talking about dealing with a major sluggish economic recovery and lots of hardship and waste and we can really benefit from proposals like what the president had to prevent the further drag that the withdrawal of existing actions will have. We'll disagree on that.
A $450 billion stimulus in a $14.5 trillion economy is fine-tuning. And again, it hasn't worked in the past. It obviously hasn't worked. Why would it work in the future other than to increase the debt, which is our problem? Our debt to GDP ratio, it's simply unsustainable. So that's, again, I just have my concerns. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator.